Hello, and welcome to another episode of the In the Trench with Gangrene podcast. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today we are joined by a very special guest, Kevin, also goes by Primetime from Let's Talk Jets Radio. How you doing, man? Thanks for coming on.
Doing great, man. It's Friday. Jets are 5-2. It's Patriots week. Excited, man.
Yep, it's an exciting time to be a New York Jets fan. 5-2. Guess I could try and do my best Mr. Primetime impression. Um, But I guess we could start off getting right into it. You nailed it right on the head. 5-2, really great time to be a New York Jets fan. Haven't had this much success in a really long time. I guess I'll start with this. What are kind of your thoughts, just overall on the season so far? What you've seen overall from the team, and kind of expectations going the rest of the way?
So far, I mean, it's hard to deny that they've exceeded expectations. You have young players across the board that are playing at a high level, and I think more importantly, you see that these guys are buying into Coach Saleh. We were all ripping him the first 3 weeks of the season. Some people wanted him fired, and there's a lot of situations you could look back on that he handled very well. The thing with Ulbrich and Quinnen Williams, the Elijah Moore situation, the receipts comment, like ultimately all the players bought in once he said that. He put himself on the line, he put his neck out there, and all the players bought in. They've been playing hard. The defense is playing at a ridiculous level right now, and that's supposed to be his area of specialties. So I just feel like everyone's responding to him. It's a close knit group. They're playing together, and that's really what you want to see from a young team, because that's the culture, the identity, everything that's going to be sustainable for the future. That's what you want to see.
Yeah, I totally agree. The receipts comments too at the time, they were, they were a little embarrassing at the time, and they seemed like things were going kind of in the wrong direction, because
But
that
but
was, when we were, 1-2 and 1-1 and kind of just not playing well. And it seemed like, again, the accountability wasn't there, but the players are buying in, and whatever he's doing behind the scenes is clearly working, like you mentioned.
it looked terrible at the time, but
Yeah,
like that was a move out of the Rex Ryan playbook. He would do that all the
yeah,
time, where all the attention would go on him and nobody was talking about the players. All the pressure was put on Saleh. He put it on himself, and the players responded. They were loose. They're playing at a high level. He pushed all the right buttons so far.
Yeah, and exactly. Rex Ryan would, that's why his teams were so dominant, so physical, and this defense too has not, we haven't seen a defense this good since the Rex Ryan days. So, we go from the season solid to now, kind of before we really get into the offense, the defense, and the players. We'll start with the offense, and we'll go to the defense side of the ball. What have your thoughts so far been on the season with Mike LaFleur? At the coordinator spot? Obviously, first year coordinator last year. This season, offense has been, it's had some ups and downs. What are your thoughts so far on Mike LaFleur?
I'd like to see a little bit more imagination, a little bit more out of the scripted plays, find some ways to get Zach in a rhythm early. But he's also calling a game, I think, to just the flow of the game. The defense has been dominant. So I think it's been a little bit more of a conservative approach as far as not letting Wilson make mistakes and just trying to play the field position battle and allow your defense to win the game with smart offense. So I'd like to see, as the season goes on, the offense open it up a little bit. And I think the injuries with AVT, with Breece Hall, Corey Davis being out, I think in a sense it almost forces you to get Zach going a little bit and put the ball in his hands to win some games.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and especially with the Elijah Moore stuff too that comes into play. That's kind of been, has been, well, the one, I guess, negative to this season so far that's been so promising and so good up to this point. Then we go to the quarterback spot, which has been, started with Flacco, now to Zach. And, he led us to the comeback against Pittsburgh, stepped up in a big way on the road. Some of the, he's missing some of the easy throws. He is playing against some good defenses. It's kind of, a little bit of everything. What are kind of your thoughts so far on Zach Wilson's play? And, too, with, some of the receivers, kind of, Elijah Moore and pieces like that, last week wasn't in and stuff. What are your kind of thoughts too on, Zach Wilson and what he's brought to the table so far?
Tough to evaluate him. Again, it's been 17 games. You try to set the bar a little bit higher, for a second overall pick. He's got weapons to work with. But certainly, especially last week, the last 2 weeks, really, there's a lot of things that are a little bit alarming, I think, as far as footwork, as far as accuracy, just hitting those easy throws. Ultimately, if he can get that down, there's not a throw on the field that he can't make. And, he's a mobile kid. I think he's a smart kid. I think he has the respect of the locker room. It's just a matter of, whether or not he can do it consistently. How much of that falls on him versus LaFleur and the play calling. But, I think he's got to be a little bit better. but it's also hard not to look at the 4-0 record, the comeback, like you said, against Pittsburgh. I thought the Miami
Mhm.
game was one of his better games, just as far as being decisive, going through his reads, being accurate with the football. Like that game, I was beyond impressed, even though the numbers weren't, 300 yards, 3 touchdowns.
Yep.
He was efficient. He was moving the ball. And, I think there was like two passes that were stopped at the 1 yard line. So we should have had a few touchdowns. So I know we overblow some things like 10 touchdowns in 17 games, the completion percentage, all of which has to be better. But at the end of the day, the team is winning. So he's getting a chance to figure it out while the team is 5-2. So it's
Yeah,
hard to
and
complain like that.
yeah, totally agree. And he's not making that big turnover either. He's,
Yep.
that Miami game, like you mentioned, I really like that at him because the ball, they were running the ball and they were dominating. He did what he needed to do. He took what the defense was giving and played within the offense. He didn't need to go out there and throw for 300 yards when the run game was doing what it was doing and Miami Dolphins had no answer. Now we talk about the run game and now we kind of shift to that here. I guess we'll start with the two big injuries and,
Yeah.
two just deflating injuries you feel for both players. What are your thoughts on, the Breece Hall? We'll start with Breece Hall, then we'll go to the AVT injury. Gets hurt, done for the year, torn ACL, was so promising, was playing, was not just one of the best rookies in the league, one of the best running
Yep.
backs in football. Just to be completely honest, when you look at the
Yep.
numbers and you watch him play, then he now goes down. Thoughts on his injury and the way Douglas responded same day going out and trading for James Robinson from Jacksonville?
Well, I mean, first, you can't replace a guy like Breece Hall. The
Yeah.
the home run ability that he provides, the speed. If you make one little mistake on defense, you miss one assignment, one little gap, he could take it to the house. So, like, defenses have to play the Jets perfect, otherwise he's going to be a nightmare. So losing him is impossible to replace. But you could still have, like the Niners did a few years ago with Mostert and their three-headed back. You could still have that same thing here with Michael Carter and James Robinson leading the way. So I think Robinson's a physical runner, good one-cut guy. I think him and Carter can make a really nice tandem. You just kind of lose that home run ability with Breece Hall, which is again impossible to replace.
Yeah, totally agree. And you kind of hear yesterday Michael Floor say they'll ride with the hot hand. How do you kind of see? I know like you mentioned with the three-headed running back tandem that was in San Francisco with Mostert and all them. Do you see them riding with the hot hand? Do you see them? Is it Carter the number one? Is Carter more coming out of backfield passing? How do you kind of see them navigating his running back room now without Breece and just Robinson and
Well,
Michael
at least
Carter?
at least for the next 2 weeks against the Patriots and Bills before the bye week, I would expect to see Michael Carter get at least probably 70 to 75% of the snaps, just based on
Mhm.
familiarity with the offense, knowing the system. But after the bye week, you would think it's been 3 weeks for Robinson, he should be a little bit more comfortable. Then I could see maybe a little bit more of 50-50 split. I like Carter probably a little bit more on third downs. I think he gives you a little bit more speed, a little bit more pass catching ability out of the backfield. But Robinson's no slouch there either. I think he had like 43 catches as a rookie. So as long as he's healthy, I could definitely see more of a 50-50 split after the bye.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. And then, Zonovan Knight, does he find a way to play a role in it as well? They activate him off the practice squad. But I think my biggest takeaway
Yeah.
too is just the fact that it just clearly shows Joe Douglas is just,
He's all in.
clearly,
Yeah, he's trying to win
yep.
this year. That's yeah.
Yeah. And he's trying to win this year, and he's also still building for the future. I mean, it's just crazy to see these type of things that he's doing. I mean, that pick was with Blake Cashman. I mean, that's just, and to get,
Exactly.
James Robinson back, it's
Yeah.
just, I mean, it's a credit to him really, because McCagnon would never be able to do that. So
No.
that's also another, something refreshing. You go from Gaze to Saleh to McCagnon to Douglas, which is all
He's
really,
gotten tremendous value on pretty much
yeah.
every single one of his trades. He's played the market
Yeah.
perfectly. Adams, Darnold, Cashman, even the Chris Herndon trade, getting a 4th-round pick. He's gotten phenomenal value on some of these guys.
Yeah. Chris Herndon's not even, I don't even know.
Yeah, is
what
he on a team? Is he on a team right now? I haven't heard his
I
name in like
think he
a
might.
year and a half.
I think he was on Minnesota, but he doesn't do anything. I mean,
Nah.
I don't even know what Blake Cashman's doing these days either. So it's really pretty pivotal. But it's so great to see him going. And he's going all in. They're 5-2, and he wants to see this team win. And he's kind of going back to the words he said at the beginning of the year, where 6 wins in the past 2 years isn't good enough, and that's all great to say. But to go out there and finally prove it is definitely something that is really good to see. So you now go to the AVT injury, and the offensive line's kind of been all over the place to begin with this year. AVT's been playing all over the place, and he's been big at wherever he has played this year. Your thoughts on the AVT injury? Do you see them going out? Tunsil's been a name that's been thrown around over the past couple of days with the trade deadline coming up on Tuesday. Do you see them going after a lineman? Do they wait until Mitchell and Fant are healthy? What do you see how the rest of this offensive line plays out and the impact of AVT's injury?
Well, first on AVT, I mean, I think even more so than Brees Hall, you cannot replace what he brings on the offensive
Mm-hmm.
line from a versatility standpoint, from just being a beast out there, run game, pass game. He does it all. So I think that's going to be a bigger loss than Hall. I think you
Yep.
could still have a ground game, with Michael Carter and James Robinson, but not having AVT on that offensive line. You worry about running the football and you worry about getting Zach killed. To me, whether or not Douglas makes a trade, it's going to come down to George Fant being healthy. It seems like reports out of camp the last few days, it seems like, they're a little bit concerned that, Fant's actually going to come back this year. So if that's the case, I'd be a little skeptical riding with Mitchell. I know he was solid the first few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But Dwayne Brown, he's also banged up with the shoulder. So you're kind of one injury away from, possibly having Mitchell and Agbui as your two tackles, which
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't be ideal if, you're talking about meaningful December games. So I think it kind of comes down to value. I don't think Douglas is going to give up a first round pick for a Tunzel or anybody like that, which is probably going to be what it takes. But if you could ultimately get somebody that's going to be here next year with all the questions around Becton, I don't think it would
Yep.
be a bad move at all.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you nailed it right in the head. That last statement there with Becton, you don't know what's going to happen with him,
Exactly.
and, same thing with Dwayne Brown too. It's just like next year, there could be a lot of, and Font too being a free agent, a lot of
They might need two
questions.
tackles next year. So if you can
Yeah.
get one of them now, it's
Yeah.
hard to
And
argue
then,
that. It's hard to argue it.
yep. And then if you address the other one, maybe in the draft or however you kind of play it out, would,
Yep.
would definitely be something to keep an eye on. So the offense line's, definitely been interesting. It's kind of all over the place. You hope that there was more going into the off season, going to training camp. There's a lot more hope. It's been all over the place, but it hasn't been awful. It's not where we want it to be, but I've seen worse.
Considering all the moving
Yep.
parts, they're holding up fairly well. I mean, I know Zach last week was kind of running around for his life a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
at least the ground game has been there. And when you have a running game, you can work all sorts of stuff off that.
Yeah, and I think this is a big week too because Belichick's going to bring pressure, and especially against young
Yep.
quarterbacks,
Yep.
he's going to throw everything at you. He's going to throw many different things at you. So this is a big test for this offensive line. You mentioned last week was tough. Broncos a good D on the road. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Douglas addresses this over the next couple days here leading up into the deadline. You go to the receivers, and before we even get into Garrett Wilson, Corey Davis, or anybody else, we have to start with Elijah Moore.
Yep.
What were your thoughts on the trade request? Now he's back. You see him and LaFleur, shaking hands at practice. Seems like he's kind of. It's just been your thoughts on
Yeah.
the situation, which has kind of just been odd.
I was frustrated because I'm not going to defend him. I know people in the chat, during the show were saying I was defending
Mm-hmm.
him. You can't defend what he did when he did it. It was a selfish move. But I did
Yep.
understand the frustration. And, you listen to Zach Wilson talk, you hear Solid during the week. It sounds like they kind of understand as well. Like, these things happen in the NFL. It's a business. Receivers, if they're talented, they want their targets. So I'm not happy with him, but I understand where he was coming from. I don't think he handled it the right way, but I think the Jets handled it the right way as far as sending him home, making him inactive, giving him a few days to think about it. And ultimately, the situation that we all want is him to be back in a Jets uniform making plays. We need another receiver next to Garrett Wilson. Right now, you got Corey Davis hurt. So, if that could be your 1-2 punch, I see no reason to try to force him out the door for a third round pick, like the same package that the Giants got for Tony. For me, that's not worth it. You don't let a player with 2.5 years under team control, making next to no money, dictate the terms and then send him to, play with Aaron Rodgers or Pat Mahomes. Like that's not the way you do things. And I'm glad Joe Douglas didn't do it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And look, they kind of had a choice. You either try to make amends of it and try to, make up, or you don't trade him and he sits the bench the rest of the year and he endures it here, and he's got to, endure it and just, sit the bench and, you won't even be racking up any stats on the bench.
Exactly.
Do you think that this is going to be, I don't want to use problem as the right word, but do you think Wilson might feel the need to force it? Because that's my one
I
concern.
worry about
Elijah
that.
Moore's talented. Do you think like he might feel the need? And that's why I want to make sure that LaFleur is like telling him, like, don't force it. Stick to the game plan. Do you think that he might force it to Moore to try to get him the ball to try to, make him happy, I guess, if you want to use that term?
I would hope not. I would hope
Mhm.
that the thought process isn't like I'm gonna reward this player, just because he was pissed off. Like, no, you
Yep.
still have to operate the offense the way it's supposed to run. If anything, I think it maybe opened up LaFleur's eyes as far as different ways to use Elijah Moore. I know there was some talk during the week, get him in the slot a little bit more. I feel like that's where he's most effective. He's not a big receiver, he's not very tall, but he's quick, he's shifty, he can make those catches underneath, he can make
Yep.
guys miss. For me, like that's the perfect complement to Garrett Wilson on the outside. Garrett Wilson, he can run pretty much every route on the route tree, but Elijah Moore doing what he does underneath, I feel like that's a nice little combo to have. And it just seems like we've seen too much of Elijah Moore going vertical this year, where he's double covered,
Mhm.
and the lack of targets kind of speak for itself.
Yeah, it's always you nailed it on the head there. It's always, he's going deep 25, 30 yards
Yeah,
downfield, one-on-one coverage, and it's not working. That's just not
no,
what, that's not the player he type is. And he's not very tall either. He's not that
yeah,
guy that's going to go up and make, one-on-one catches and contested plays. And he makes guys miss with ease. He's very good in open space. So you
bingo.
get him the ball in open space, like you mentioned. We saw it last year. Like him and Wilson had that strong connection towards the end of last season,
They
and
did.
you just hope that it can come back starting this week if Moore, plays the rest of the year, assuming he doesn't get angry again.
Yeah, yeah.
But we'll see. It's definitely something that's interesting. So,
It's frustrating that it's even a topic though when the team is 5-2, and
yep,
that's why I get like where fans are frustrated. I just didn't like seeing some of the comments under his last post when he did the Bible thing. Like
yeah,
I totally get the frustration with him, but we don't want to push him further out the door. We're a 5-2 team that's going to be playing some meaningful games this year. At the very least, try to make it work until the end of the year, up his trade value, and then
hmm
if things can't be resolved, you trade him in the offseason and you deal with it then.
yeah, exactly. And if he ups his value and he plays well these final however many games plus if we make it to the postseason, I mean you're going to get a good amount for him, for a guy
Yep.
going into his third year.
Yep.
So it's definitely interesting. You go to the rest of the receiving core, Garrett Wilson, Davis, Barrios now, got a little bit more run last week with Moore being out. Kind of your thoughts, outside of obviously Elijah Moore, your thoughts on the receiving core as a whole. It hasn't been phenomenal, similar to the pat. It kind of,
Mhm.
it makes sense. It goes
Yeah.
as kind of Zach Wilson goes. Your thoughts on the
Bingo.
receiving core?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to judge the receivers when the quarterback play hasn't been great. We have some
hmm
questions, like we talked about the play calling as well. But I think Garrett Wilson showed what he's capable of in that Cleveland game. He's gone up against some ridiculous corners the last few weeks. Sertan, Alexander. If anything, that's
Yep.
a great learning experience for him. Going up against those guys, he's only going to get better with that experience. Corey Davis, I feel like, has been probably the Jets' most consistent receiver. Maybe not the
hmm
best, but what he provides as far as a run blocker goes, that is huge in this offense, and it's a big reason why the
Yep.
running game has been so successful. So I think that's going to be a huge loss this Sunday. But Barrios has been good too. He's a guy that you can get involved with all those
hmm
gadget plays, the end arounds, and things like that. I'd like to see that a little bit more this week. And
Yeah, totally agree.
it's a revenge game too for Barrios going up against
Yeah, very,
Belichick too. So
yeah, Barrios going up against a former
yeah,
team. He's been another kind of gem that Joe Douglas found.
yep.
Just the guy picked him up, and he had a very good year
I'm pretty
last
sure it
year.
was
And
him and JFM that they claimed that
yep,
same offseason, right? As
yeah,
waiver claims, right?
yeah, and then he claimed Quincy Williams last year, who
Yeah,
we'll
that
get
too.
to here in a
Yep,
little bit. But
yep.
yeah, he continues to do some really good things. So you mentioned Garrett Wilson and Barrios and that all that kind of stuff. I totally agree with you with Corey Davis. He's much better year than last year. Last year was very inconsistent, dropping balls. This year has been like you mentioned, one of our more consistent guys. Do
And
you see?
big in the fourth quarter too.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Especially that Pittsburgh game.
Yep,
It was Wilson and Corey Davis.
yep.
And that was it. So with Corey Davis being out this week, do you see Denzel Mims? He was active last week, didn't get a ton of didn't I mean he was out there. He did have a nice block, but didn't get a ton of, targets. Do you see him playing a role this week?
I could see him in limited packages. I mean, he's not going to get 10 targets. He's not going to
hmm
be featured in the offense. But like you said, he provided a huge block that helped spring Brees Hall on that big touchdown run.
Yep.
I could see him maybe in there first, second down running plays. But third down, I want to see more of Garrett Wilson. Elijah Moore should be on the field. Both of those guys. Every third down, every passing play, or passing situation, they should be on the field, and even Barrios too, just for what he provides, with being able to do different things.
Yeah, I totally agree. So big game coming up for the offense. We'll go to keys for the offense, and we'll go to the defense as well. What are your kind of keys? A couple keys for this offense to put up points this week. Get going early and beat New England at home.
Well, I think Belichick is going to look to take away the run. Without
Yeah.
AVT, no Corey Davis, no Brees Hall. He's going to stack the box. He's going to take away the run, and he's going to put pressure on Wilson. Wilson. I hate to say it, but I mean, he's been one of the worst quarterbacks in the league when he's facing pressure. But when he has a
Mhm.
clean pocket, he's been successful. So
Yeah.
I can't see any scenario where Belichick's just going to sit back in coverage and play it that way. No, he's gonna send blitzes. He's going to disguise his coverages and really try to get after it. So I'm a little bit worried from that perspective. But I also think we have the weapons as far as the quick screen game and getting the tight ends a little bit more involved. I think we
Mhm.
have the guys to counteract that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And how do you think they'll use the run game, this week? Do you think Robinson plays? I know Salah kind of says it's kind of what, 50-50 or what,
Yeah,
something like that.
he'll play, but I don't expect to see him that much.
Yeah.
I expect to see a lot more of Carter. He's been here, all year, all last year. He knows the offense. He knows the system. I expect to see a lot more of Carter than Robinson.
Mhm. Yeah, and then actually, got to go to the tight ends too. You
Yeah,
mentioned them. Yeah. It makes sense, I guess. I kind of forgot about them because they haven't done a ton,
exactly,
but
exactly. It's easy to forget
it,
about them.
yeah. What are your do you see them? I mean, I think they should play a role this week, especially for Wilson. If they're going to bring pressure, it's got to be quick throws. Get Elijah Moore across the middle, get Conklin, get Uzama involved, even Carter coming out of the backfield. What are your thoughts on the tight end so far, which have kind of been just not great to put it at
Yeah.
that?
I mean, they were supposed to be the security blanket for Zach, and
Hmm.
on all these plays where he's running around, trying to avoid all these hits. It's like, where's your check down? Where's your tight end?
Hmm.
Conklin, Uzama, like those were the guys that we were talking about all offseason. You're paying them a combined $20 million. They should be able to help this kid out a little bit.
Yep.
So I'm not going to discount what they've done in the run game. I think they do a lot of the dirty work that really goes unnoticed, even in pass protection. They help out. So what they've done as blockers has been fine, but they definitely need to get more involved in the passing game for the amount of money that they're making, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And
And
where's Jeremy Ruckert been? It seems like every week there's a new rookie tight end that's making big plays. You had Isaiah Likely last night. I'm like, where's
mhm.
Ruckert? We can't get him involved.
Yeah, he hasn't done. I think they're trying kind of treating this almost like what do you want to call it? Like a
Like a
red
red
shirt
shirt,
year
yeah,
kind of.
a red
Yeah,
shirt year, yeah,
just kind of like let them learn, let them watch, and then next year you put them out there. I don't know. I mean, I mean, you wonder why now they didn't probably go out and really spend up a higher pick on like a Trey McBride or anything, that they kind of waited more for Rucker. But I don't know. It's definitely interesting. I mean, the tight end group's just, we thought we had something, and out of the entire offense, I think that's kind of been the biggest disappointment. But you hope it can kind of get going. And it's like games like this, like New England
yep, yep,
last week against Denver, you thought they'd get going. It's games where you're playing against tough defense that bring pressure, that you would think a big body over the middle, across the middle of the field would be big, but it
yep,
just hasn't been that way. So it's definitely interesting. Overall, though, we're 5-2. The offense, the run game's been great. Passing game's been a little iffy. Um, but overall, we're winning games, and that's all that matters. You
yep.
go now to the defensive side of the ball, and Jeff Ulbrich. I guess we gotta start an apology for him, because we crushed him at the beginning of the
Yep,
year, and rightfully so. It was all deserved. I mean, the
yep,
defense last year was historically bad, and to start this year too, it was iffy. But they've turned it around. And similar to the offense, like once the receipt comments were said, defense turned it around, team as a whole turned
yep.
around. What are your thoughts on Ulbrich? And I, kind of throw Salah in there too. This defense is legit. It's nasty.
Very impressed with just the turnaround on defense, how these guys have all bought in. Even the rotation, which we were very critical of early in the year. Guys are fresh in the fourth quarter. The way that we're
Mhm. Yep.
dominating teams in the fourth quarter, you can't discount the rotation throughout the first three quarters and having your best players being fresh in the fourth. I hate it in big plays. I hate it, it's like 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, and
Yep.
I'm looking at Solomon Thomas and Nathan Shepard out there. But again, in the fourth quarter, your best players are ultimately fresh, and they're making big plays. So I give them a lot of credit for that. I'd like to see a little bit more pressure. I know they don't
Hmm.
really blitz a lot. I think Salah had the quote last week, we're going to coverage you to death, which is fine because you have the corners to do it. But I would like to see a little bit more pressure, just kind of, bringing some guys off the edge. I know they had one blitz with Michael Carter. He almost got there. Sauce had the big hit on Bridgewater in the
Hmm.
Dolphin game. I think there's
Yep.
room to get a little bit more creative with some of the blitzes, but I just think he has so much confidence in his corners right now, where he just doesn't want to get burned, like Greg Williams on doing something stupid on a zero blitz or something like that.
Yeah, the tank
Yeah,
defense.
exactly.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, you mentioned the blitz. I would like to see more of that, especially this week, because I saw a stat yesterday or today, I think it was, or whatever. You mentioned Zach Wilson was bad against the blitz. I think Mac Jones is like the only worst quarterback against the blitz. Like
Yep.
he's not good against it. So you blitz him or it was stats, something like that, or whatever it was. But you got to blitz New England this week and get some pressure, especially with the way this defensive line's been playing. And again, earlier in the year too, we were complaining about the defensive line, and rightfully so. But they've also turned it around. They're high priced. They weren't playing well.
Yeah.
But man, oh man, I mean, Quinnen Williams has got to be in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year with the way he's been playing. Your thoughts on the defensive line?
Yeah, Quinnen's just upped it to completely another level. Right after that argument with the coach on the sideline, and Obrich calling him out for breathing heavy, like he's been an absolute
Yep.
monster since then. Carl Lawson, he's been good. I don't know if he's
Mm-hmm.
been worth the $15 million a year price tag. He gets his pressures, he gets his hits. I feel like he kind of disappears for too long of stretches during
Yep.
games. But in the fourth quarter, again, like him, Q, JFM, those guys have all been making plays and getting some big pressures. So it's hard to discount what they've been able to do. And even some of the rotational guys, Bryce Huff, when he's in
Yep.
there, limited plays, he's getting pressure. He's beating his man one-on-one, and sometimes he's allowing other guys to get there too. So
Mm-hmm.
I think they have a nice rotation right now. Guys are healthy, guys are fresh, and they're playing well.
Yeah, and Huff's been, Huff was inactive to start, and
Which I
we were
hated
all
that.
calling,
Hated
yeah,
that.
yeah, we were all calling for him to be active, and the limited snaps he's get, like you said, rotation guys, he's been really good. I'll tell you what, I talking about the veterans and stuff, and at times we've all kind of bashed him a little bit, and rightfully so, especially early in the year. A couple of the undisciplined penalties were a lot of the veterans. What are your thoughts on Sheldon Rankin so far? I've actually been pretty pleased with the way he's been playing. Your thoughts on him? Kind of a guy that last year was in there, was all right, but this year it seems like especially against the Packers, kind of showing more out there.
He's a guy every week that's been producing, and for
Yep.
whatever reason, just rarely gets talked about. Even me, like
Hmm.
most of the time when we talk about the D line, I go right to Quinnen Williams and Carl Lawson, Bryce Huff.
Yep.
But like he's been as consistent as anybody on that defensive line, and he's been getting some pressures too. I really like the way he's playing. I questioned that contract initially when they gave it to him. I
Uh-huh.
questioned bringing him back this year. I think it was a little over $5 million they were paying him. He's earned every bit of that so far.
Yeah, I totally agree. He's real solid, and just another kind of just a guy to plug those holes up front. So it's been good. The defensive line kind of has gone where the defense has gone, where it started out struggling, rotations, but now is lethal, and that's really the pretty basic way I could put it. We now go to the linebackers. Quincy Williams, Quan Alexander, they just bring energy. I mean, they just bring straight energy with their hard hits, their overall just energy. Your thoughts on the linebackers, Mosley as well,
Yeah,
who last week I thought that was an interception to seal the game, but it wasn't.
definitely
But
was.
either way,
Definitely was.
yeah. Your thoughts on the linebackers?
Linebackers have been good. My only critique, I guess, is probably in coverage. Tight ends have
Mm-hmm.
beaten us a little bit this year.
Yeah.
It seems at times we're a little bit slow getting over, but the way that they've played it, especially against the run, some of the big hits that they're making in the fourth quarter, like these are momentum changing type plays that they're bringing. The energy, the leadership. Alexander Quincy's been big since he came back from the injury, and even Mosley, he's the heart and soul of that defense. He doesn't make like those big plays. You don't really see him getting interceptions or sacks, but
Nope.
he's consistent, and guys aren't getting yards after contact either, which is something that hasn't really been talked about a lot with this defense. When they get there, they're wrapping up. We're not seeing that same arm tackle bullshit that we've seen in years past.
Mm-hmm.
Like when
Yep.
they hit you and you go backwards, which is something like you love seeing that. It brings energy, crowd gets fired up during home games, like the team all responds to it. Like those kind of hits that our linebackers are bringing, they're big.
Yep. And Quincy Williams, as mentioned, Quincy and Quan, those are two also, Douglas kind of gems where
Yep.
Quan, you bring him in right before training camp, and Quincy Williams as well last season. I think if you could, maybe touch upon this too, like last year, Quincy Williams, he was good, but, he was kind of like a high risk, high reward player where like he missed, I felt like he kind of missed a lot of tackles.
Yep. Yep.
Like this year, it seems like tackles that he was missing last year, he's making this year. And, as you mentioned, delivering some big hits.
He seems bigger. He seems a little faster, stronger. I mean, maybe it's just working out with his brother. I
Yeah.
don't know, more comfortable in the system. But
Yeah.
yeah, he's playing at a much higher level than he was last year. And last year he was pretty good too.
Yeah. So it's really something that's, it's just, it's been solid. And, you definitely down the road, with Quan and CJ Mosley both getting up there in age, but Quincy Williams, is young on the younger side. He seems like he could be a piece for a long time here if he continues to play like he's playing. So we now go to the corners, which just
My
are,
favorite.
amazing. I mean, I don't even know what to say. From the days of Tremaine Johnson to Buster Screen
Oh,
to whatever,
Daryl
Daryl
Roberts.
Roberts. Yeah, it's just, I mean, it's so refreshing to see when you could put two corners on an island and absolutely shut down Judy, Sutton, Jamar Chase. I mean, we're not naming teams number 3, 4 wide receivers. We're naming some of the top receivers in
Yep.
football I mean, we shut down Tyreek Hill. No other team has done
Yep.
that really. I mean, we're talking about some of the best receivers in football that this team has shut down, and DJ Reed too had a big hit last week. Your thoughts on a cornerback room that we have not seen this good in a really long time?
I mean, like, what do you say? What do you say about them that hasn't already been said as
Yep.
far as leadership, productivity? I mean, I questioned the hell out of the Sauce pick initially, not because I disliked the player, just because I thought there were bigger needs, offensive
Mm-hmm.
line, pass rush. It all kind of seemed like, this defense for Saleh was built on having a four-man rush that can get to the quarterback, and then you could have cornerbacks that, are just average or okay. But they went the other way. They got the elite corners, and it's buying more time for the guys up front to ultimately get there. Sauce has just been unbelievable. I honestly, I think he's playing better than how Revis played as a rookie.
Mm-hmm.
Revis was elite year 2, and then Revis Island grew year 3. Revis was not at this level, I don't think, his
Yep.
rookie year. The way Sauce gets his head turned around, the way he plays the ball, the way, he keeps his eyes locked on the receiver. As soon as they go to grab it, he knocks that shit right out. Like, he is just
Yep.
unbelievable. And I think his tackling's gotten better too. And I think a lot of that also comes from DJ Reed. We were at training camp quite a bit this summer, and those two were just locked at the hip every
Yep.
drill, individual drills. They would be working together on the side, doing stuff technique wise. It's just such a great tandem to watch. So fun.
Yep. And yeah, it's just like, and to think too, you talk about like being a rookie, that they have the trust to put him out there on an island. This early in his career is just really, really great to see.
That's why you take a guy 4th overall like that. He should
Yep.
be able to do that, and he's earning that rep that he's got. He's earned the Sauce nickname.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. Without a doubt. I mean,
Yeah.
and he also brings, some swagger and, like you mentioned,
Yep.
like energy. It's just,
They
we haven't
needed
had
that.
that. Yep. We haven't had that in a long time. But, another thing too about Sauce, and you were at training camp a ton. The day I went too, I remember, walking up and seeing, a guy, in the white jersey and his football, gear and stuff. And you're looking, it was Sauce. He was out there every single day, first one out there, like 25, 30 minutes before practice,
Yep.
stretching, getting ready. And it's like, that's too also one you see, like the work ethic is there. He's all in. He's all in. And especially seeing that at training camp.
I'd love seeing that because, I always get there early for training camp too, just kind of,
Mhm.
relax for a little bit. And, 25, 30 minutes before practice was set to start, all of a sudden you look across the field at the far field. I'm
Yep.
like, who's that already out there, warming up and just kind of, going through his technique. I'm like, who saw like already? And every day it was the same thing. I'd get there early. There's Sauce doing his thing again.
Mhm.
It just shows that the game means something to him. He didn't take his 4th overall pick and say, all right, I've made it already. I'm a star.
Yep.
He's worked for every single thing that he has right now. And he has so much room to grow too and get better.
Yep. Exactly. It's really promising. And I mean, it's great to see. And even, too, you go to some of the other corners like Michael Carter and Eccles. They've also, they've made some plays
Yep.
themselves in the snaps they've been in. What are your thoughts on those two guys?
Yeah, Carter's played very well. Carter's played
Mhm.
very well, and I forget the game where Eccles was needed for a few plays. Was it
Um,
Green Bay or the road game before that? But yeah, he had 2
might
big.
be
I think it
Green
might have
Bay.
been Green Bay where he had the 2
Yep.
stops in the end zone. And then Sauce came back
Yeah.
in. But yeah, I mean they have depth, which is amazing. We were looking at Bryce Hall as one of the starters last year. He can't even get active right now. So that just
Mhm.
shows how far
Yep.
this group has come.
Yeah, yeah, it was Green Bay because I think that was the game where Sauce got a hit or something and his head, and they had to go check him in the blue tent, and he was out for
Yep.
like a play or two. I remember I don't think he wanted to
Yeah,
go out, but
they targeted Eccles both times where he
yep,
was out in the red zone, and Eccles was ready for
yeah,
the
and
challenge.
Eccles was there to make a play, and it shows you too kind of what like other teams think of Eccles, and it seems like he's kind of taking that and using that to his advantage. Where they're like, oh, Sauce isn't out here, let's target the guy with the less experience, or well, he's second year but not much playing time, and he's made some plays. You mentioned Bryce Hall. Do you see them? He's popped up in some rumors. Do you see them trading him, or do you think they just use him as a depth just in case if you need him down the road here?
Depends. The way he played last year, I think he overachieved. And then, you watch him this year, and the Giant game for me was very alarming.
Mm-hmm.
During the preseason, where it just seemed like every pass he was slow, he was late getting over, and he was never really a speed guy to begin with. So
Yep.
I'm not really sure what changed from last year to this year. Um, But yeah, if you could probably get maybe a 5th round pick, I'd
Hmm.
consider it. The only thing is, where's your depth then? If somebody goes down,
Yep.
you're playing big games in December, you want to at least have somebody that does have some experience behind, Eccles and Carter just in case.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be interesting. I think Douglas will probably hold on to him.
I think so
And
too.
you mentioned too, played pretty well last year, but the couple of preseason games, even against the Falcons, like I think there was
Yeah.
that play where he got burned by Pitts or something. It wasn't good. So,
Yeah. Even
but
in camp, he didn't look too great. So
yeah, but definitely a guy that if you needed him, you could trust him over anybody else, especially with some of the it's interesting. I wouldn't I would probably gear to the sides that they're not going to get rid of him. But now you go to the safeties position. So the safety spot, it's odd because Joyner had the interception last week. Has like some really bad games, and then he gets like an interception here or there, or he'll have like I forget what game he absolutely played was phenomenal. I forget the game it was. What was the game where he
where he had the 2 interceptions,
yeah, it was
I'm drawing a blank too.
I think it was that week. It might have been, was it Pittsburgh?
Maybe
It might have been, I'm not sure. But
the,
anyway, he
the
had the
games
game
are
of
all
his
blending
life.
together.
Yeah. It was the game of his life there. Whitehead obviously, out there, Davis really hasn't got much action. Your thoughts on the safety spot, which has kind of been, I guess, quiet in a way when you look at like the corners and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, so much credit for Joyner after those first few weeks. We were all ready to
Hmm.
cut him. He just looked awful, couldn't
Yep.
tackle, was terrible in coverage, got beat a few times. There were some miscommunications. But once DJ Reed made that comment, like we all need to get on the same page,
Yep.
everyone back there has been great. Even Whitehead, who struggled a little bit early on. I
Hmm.
think we all still expect a little bit more out of him just as far as
Yeah.
game-changing plays, but he's still a big-time hitter. He still provides a lot of help in run support. So I like what they're doing just as a group right now. They're all playing together. They're not giving up big plays. They're not having those miscommunications like we've seen plenty of times in years past. They're playing like a solid unit that has a lot of trust in one another.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you mentioned too, like being a hard hitter, Whitehead, Quincy Williams, Quan, like all these
Yep.
guys, and I think and I guess you could touch on this too, like all those guys bring so much energy, which, with the hits they make, and like you mentioned, like the energy shift that it makes, when you deliver a big hit like that,
Yep.
which we haven't really had in
Well,
a
well,
while.
I think that's part of
Mhm.
why like teams are going down the way they are in the fourth quarter.
Yep.
You're beating them up for 3 straight quarters, ground and pound on offense, big hits on defense.
Hmm.
At a certain point, teams are like, all right, I don't want anymore.
Hmm.
It's the same in boxing and UFC. Football is the same way. You eventually hit somebody hard enough times, they're going to fold, and that's what we're doing. Two teams right now. Whereas in years past, like that was always done to us. We were
Yep.
always the team that, third, fourth quarter, we didn't have an answer. We were tired. Our defense would be on the field forever. Now we're doing that to other teams, and it's great to watch.
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned it too. I was gonna say that too. Like there were so many years where the Jets would always blow games in the fourth quarter. We'd go into the fourth quarter with a 10-point lead. They go down and score. We'd have a 3-and-out, then they score again, and just before
Yep.
you know, just like that, you're down by 7.
Yep.
And it would always happen. I mean, I remember the Bulls era. It happened all the time.
Every
His
time.
teams
Yep.
would always blow it in the fourth quarter, like always. They would be winning by like 2 scores, and they'd find a way to blow it. It would just it would they would play hard for 3 quarters,
Yep.
and you get to the fourth and they blow it. So it's refreshing to finally see a team come out in the fourth quarter and you put
And
it just simply just dominate.
and not just the close games, but like they're starting
Mhm.
to run away with some of these games in the fourth
Yep.
quarter. Like, we had the Patriot game last year where they're still, Ulbrich was talking about it today, where they were still taking shots when they were up by 40 points.
Yep.
Now we're the team where, we're building that big lead and we're still going for it. We're still running you over when we've got a 2
Mhm.
touchdown lead. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and the Green Bay game was a
Yeah.
perfect
Yep.
example.
Yep. They
You know, we
quit.
just
They quit. They were done. They were
yep,
done at
yeah,
the
Green
end.
Bay was done. And I mean,
And
we
even
just
Miami too. Even Miami. Same thing in the fourth
yep,
quarter.
put up the 40 points against them. And we still pulled out a little tricks out of our bag when we went for the Barrios jet
Yep.
sweep for the 40-point for the big 40 bomb. But yeah, it's a lot of positives on the defense. And if I would to say that going into week 8, our defense would be top 10 in the league, I probably would have, I thought somebody would have been crazy if they said that because it just didn't look good to start, but it's turned around. And again, whatever they're doing behind the scenes is working because this defense is legit, as I said earlier. So we'll do what we kind of did with the offense, defense. What are your keys for this game? What do they need to do to stop an offense it's just not good. Our defense is way better than their
Yep.
offense. I mean,
Yep.
there should be no excuse. We should dominate this game when you look at the Patriots offense, and especially last week what they did at home against
Yep.
Chicago.
I think both defenses are probably going to have the same kind of game plan as far as shutting down the run and
Mm-hmm.
putting the ball in the quarterback's hands. Although I think that benefits the Jets a lot more because I think our defense is much better. I think we
Yep.
can definitely get after Mac Jones better than the Patriots will be able to get after Zach Wilson. I
Mm-hmm.
trust our secondary a lot more. And the single biggest X factor, I'm telling you right now, is going to be this crowd. They are
Yep.
ready to absolutely go berserk on Sunday. I'm telling you, it's been so long since we've had a game of this kind of meaning, and especially with the Patriots on the ropes right now,
Yep.
we've got a chance to bury Belichick, something we've been waiting 2 decades to do. This crowd is going to go insane on Sunday. If we can
Yeah,
win field position, have them buried inside the 10-yard line, they are not going 90 yards on this defense and this
yeah, and
crowd. They're not doing it.
yeah, and especially if you get a play like you did against Miami, where you get a
Yep.
sack, you get a safety early on, you get one of those big plays early on that just completely shift the momentum of the game. It's huge. Couple other things, like how do you think this team? What do you think this team needs to stop? Needs to do to stop Rahamjay Stevenson, or if I botched his first name, but from the
Ramondre, I
Patriots,
think.
who's actually had a really
Yeah.
good year under the radar, but top 10 in a lot of the running back statistical categories, including yards. What do you think they need to do to stop him?
Yeah, I mean that's probably my only worry about the Patriots. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm not worried about Mac Jones. I'm not worried
Nope.
about Devontae Parker or Myers. Like we should be able to put Sauce and Reed on islands and take those guys
Yep.
out. I'm worried about their running game. Stevenson, he's a big physical back. Damian Harris, he's healthy. He played
Mm-hmm.
last week also. I would stack the box personally. I think you got to play at least 7 guys up in the box. Our linebackers have been big time hitters, so I'm not worried about Stevenson or Harris running them over. I think we just got to fill the gaps and play aggressive against the run. And if Mac Jones makes some plays to beat you, you tip your cap. But I'm not letting the Patriots run for 250 yards on Sunday. No way.
Yep, exactly. And I think that's the biggest thing is, like you mentioned, I'm not concerned at all about Sauce and Reed. They're going to do
Yeah.
their job. I mean, they've done it against some of the best, Kendrick Bourne and those guys. They don't scare me, like you said. But the biggest thing is sometimes this team allows those long drives and you mentioned it, like if you can get them backed up, own 10-yard line, own 15,
Yep.
you got to hold them there. You can't let them go 70 yards down the field, just run,
And
or else
now
it's going to be a long day.
and that was a little concerning against Miami because people
Yep.
forget, even though the final score was 40-17, there was a point at the beginning of the fourth quarter where the Dolphins had a chance to kick a field goal to go
Yep.
ahead 20-19.
Mm-hmm.
So, they were starting to run the ball. I think Mostert had like 115 yards on unlimited carries. So the run defense still has some room to be better. Although the last 2 weeks, I mean, they completely shut down Aaron Jones, and then the Broncos didn't do too much either. So I think they're really starting to click in all phases right now on defense.
Yeah, and that Packers game too was pretty impressive because that's a pretty solid running back tandem between Dillon and Jones. And you kind of mentioned
you got to worry about Rodgers too. So
yeah, exactly. And they got good pressure on him, which was all good. That game was really, really well played all around. And then, Dillon too, being kind of that tough physical back, that's kind of what you're gonna get in Stevenson, a guy that's gonna, he's not gonna be easy to bring down, like you mentioned. He's gonna grind you out, and that's kind of the way this Patriots team is done. Another quick thing. Do you think we see Bailey Zappi get out there, or is Mac Jones out there for the full game?
You know what? It wouldn't surprise me if we see Zappi, only because I think we are absolutely going to be pounding Mac Jones. I think there's going to be pressure. I think we're going to get some big hits on him. And I think there was a report about an hour ago that he's dealing with like some numbness in his toes or whatever from his ankle injury a week ago. So yeah, I mean, I don't think he's 100%. Clearly, I think confidence wise, mentally, he's not fully there right now. You lay some big hits on him, it wouldn't surprise me at all if Belichick pulls the plug again.
Yeah, it would definitely be interesting. It's almost like it's a Brady Bledsoe all over again with Bailey Zappi,
Hopefully
but it's
not.
like,
Hopefully not.
yeah, but it's like it's Mac Jones isn't Bledsoe, and Bailey Zappi probably won't be Brady, but it's going to be interesting. It really is. I guess if we see Bailey Zappi, I guess that's a good thing because that means we're dominating Mac Jones.
Let's
So
hope so.
I don't know. It'll be interesting, but this is just a huge game. To kind of close things out here, what is kind of your prediction for this game? What does Wilson do? What does this defense do? Kind of just your overall prediction, and do the Jets get the win on Sunday?
Defense, I'm really excited about. Again, I think they're just going to feed off the energy from the crowd, which is going to be absolutely going insane. If you're a Jet fan, if you have tickets, make sure you are in your seats by 12:30. Let's have that place rocking at least by the start of the coin toss. So yeah, I'm confident with the defense. I think we will shut down the run. I think we'll get pressure on Jones. I'm not worried about their receivers at all. The only key,
Yep.
or the only way I see the Patriots having a path to victory is if Wilson turns the ball over 2 or 3 times
Hmm.
and they get some points off of that. If Wilson plays a turnover free game the way he has the last 3 weeks, Jets are winning this football game. They're the better team. They have more talent. I think they'll be able to run the ball. I think they're going to get the ball in Elijah Moore's hands a lot more this week. I think the Jets are going to win this 27-17. It's going to be a party at MetLife, and we're playing for first place next week against Buffalo.
Yep. That sounds great. That's just,
It's so deserved for the fans too.
yep.
It can't be said enough how much bullshit we've gone through with this team for so long to be in this position right now, to
Mhm.
do it against the Patriots at home.
I
The
mean,
team, the fans, like, we all deserve this.
yeah, I mean, the last time we had a game this big against New England was probably 2015 when Decker caught the
Yep.
OT winner,
Yeah.
which turns out, which was a great moment. Still my favorite moment as a
Haven't
Jet
beat them
fan.
since then.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, that's the last time. And
Yeah.
Fitzpatrick, yeah, Decker, Ivory.
Yep.
Turns out though, that game didn't mean anything really, because then you go up to the Buffalo, and we don't need to talk about that. But um it's
I was
just
there for that. Yeah.
it's just it's just a huge game. And it's big for so many reasons too, because you said, you go 6-2 and you're playing next week against Buffalo. That's huge. I mean, you go 6-2, it's big difference than going to Buffalo 5-3. I mean,
Yep.
it's just because Buffalo is going to be really tough, but it's a huge game. And you were at the game for Miami, right?
Yep. I was there.
Yep. In was the crowd was electric there, right? It was pretty.
I, I I'm different from most people. I have a much higher bar as far as what constitutes like legitimate
Mhm.
crowd noise and a real
Yep.
home field advantage, just because I go back to Giant Stadium, and that
Hmm.
was week after week, every single home game, whether the team was good or bad, that place was always rocking. Like, it was a legitimate noise. You could feel the building shake at times, especially in the big moments. There was always defense chants. And Sal even said today, the sauce hit on Teddy Bridgewater, 30% of the crowd wasn't
Yep.
even in their seats yet. So it still wasn't to my liking. They got loud on third downs and when big plays happened, but I don't think they really impacted the game at all. This
Hmm.
Sunday, I expect from the opening kickoff, I expect that crowd to be up out of their seats and making an impact.
Yep. Jets home, blackout, New England. It's just
Black for
such a
the
huge.
funeral. Let's go.
It's just such a massive game. Belichick,
Yep.
like you mentioned too, like this could really crush New England's season. I
Yep.
mean, we have an opportunity to, play for first place next week. And for New England, we have an opportunity to bury them. And
We go.
especially if we dominate Mac Jones, they're going to go into next week with more quarterback controversy, because you're not going to know whether or not to play Zappy. That just sounds so great, because it's always been New England crushing us.
Always.
And now we have an opportunity to bury New England, who's been dominating us for 2 decades. Like you mentioned, it's just, this is a
That's why I'm
golden
torn, because
opportunity.
I don't want to call it a must win, but it's
Mhm.
like, if you lose, I mean,
It,
it would be so deflating to
yeah,
watch the Patriots come back against us, and now we're 5-3. If you lose to Buffalo, now you're 5-4 going into the bye.
yeah,
Like,
it's,
just like the mental side of it, it would be huge to get this win. I
yeah,
think
I'm
I
not
think the
ready to.
team genuinely needs to exercise these demons against Belichick. I know a lot of these guys weren't here for what he's done over the last
Mhm.
2 decades against us, but still, the fans, the organization, a lot of guys in that organization, like, we all know what the Patriots have done.
Yeah.
At some point, the Jets have to get over that hurdle.
Yeah, and I've liked the way they've actually used last year 54-13 as kind of a motivation.
Yep,
You
they
know,
remember it. They remember
yep.
it.
And that's why I hope, Old Brick comes out, it's, some blitzes early on, get them under pressure, kind of say, look, we're a different team this year, and go out there and do it. But
Physical and aggressive, but under control. No stupid penalties.
yeah, exactly. No, rough in the passer or
Yeah,
taunting
which
or
they'll call it anyway. For the
yeah, but
Patriots, but
yeah, it's they'll, because Belichick's on the other side, so
uh-huh.
they'll make sure they'll try to tip the favor any way they can. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned, you kind of nailed it on the head, and we'll close it out here in a second. But with the whole 5-3 going to Buffalo, like Doug or Saleh has said, we got to close the gap in the division, and you did a great job against Miami.
Yep.
But this is kind of like a different closing the gap. This is closing the gap from 2 decades worth of absolute just misery against this team. So it's just like, not only do you want to close the gap in division, you want to go out there and dominate Belichick, and just prove that you are like, we're the inferior opponent. That's what you want to do.
You want to treat it like any other Sunday, like any other
yep,
game, but it's impossible to,
yep.
because of the history. You can't.
And yeah, like you mentioned too, like just the whole energy too. You win this game, I mean it's just huge. It really is, and
Yep.
it's a big difference going to the bye week 5-4 than going to the bye week 6-3. Because when you go out of the bye week, you got to go up against New England,
Yep.
and that's on the road. So if you win this game, right, you feel a lot better going into that New England game on the road than if you don't do it. So
Not that you want to lower the bar this much, but as long as you can find a way to win one of the next three, you're in position to make a serious run for a playoff spot.
yeah, exactly. You're what is that 6-4 if you
Six
win
and
one of
four,
them? Six
which
and
I
four,
think,
and then
yeah, which I think anybody would have signed up for at the start of the season.
exactly, and
Obviously,
then
now being 5-2, we want to raise it a little bit.
yeah, yeah,
If we could somehow get 2 out of the next 3, that would be amazing. But even at 6-4, you have a shot to play for something.
yeah. We went from 8 wins to 10 wins to let's get to 11 to soon it'll be like
Exactly.
14 we'll be looking at. But
I mean,
and then
that was the Bengals last year, right?
y-
Like they didn't come into the season expecting to make a run for the Super Bowl, and then
y-
the team was getting better week after week, and suddenly you're playing in the playoffs. Now you're playing in the conference game. Like
yeah,
it happens quick,
and it's
especially if the
this
quarterback starts to click. If
yep, and it's the
things
same
click for
path they
Zach,
won.
yep. If things click for Zach, that's the missing piece right now. If he
Yep.
somehow, if the light bulb goes on, this team could be a legitimate contender this year.
Yeah, it's the truth. You get legit quarterback play, it can be dangerous. I mean, look what, Burrow did last year. And
Yep.
it's crazy because the Bengals and the Jets following exact paths. 6
Yeah.
wins past 2 years.
Yep.
Well, for the Bengals now, it's, 2 years ago, but 6 wins to the Bengals now. It's a great time. But two, like you said, 6-4, then you get Chicago after that. So
Yep.
in Chicago, they're a winnable game. That's a winnable game. So you win that, you're 7-4. Like you just got to find a way, like you said, get a win here, keep going, stay above 500, beat the teams you're supposed to beat, and it's a fun time. So we'll close things out. How can everybody find you? What are you, doing with, obviously you guys do a great job with, Let's Talk Jets Radio, and kind of where can everybody find you?
Yeah, so we're on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, trying to get the TikTok page going. So at Talk Jets Radio, we do the Monday recaps, and then Tuesday, we bring callers on. You're always a great call breaking things down. So yeah, anybody that wants to chime in, hop on Tuesday nights, and then we always post videos throughout the week. Definitely check out Tyson's interview with Fireman Ed today. Great interview, previewing Jets Patriots. So all our content's up on there.
Yep. Yeah. You guys do a great job.
You do a great job, man.
Good job.
This
Thank
channel's
you.
also, you're doing a really good job.
Thank you. Yeah, you guys too. It's a lot of fun. A lot of really good content out there, and yeah, definitely check out Fireman Ed's interview with Tyson. I actually watched that. It was really good. Fireman Ed's, and he's right up there with the rest of us looking for a win this Sunday. So
I'm ready to start tailgating now.
yeah, this is such a big game. It really is. So that will do it. Again, thank you so much for coming on. This was a lot of fun, and would definitely look forward to doing it again. So as always, hope you guys enjoyed it, and thanks for listening.
Thanks for having me on.